China Global Television Network. Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Juliette Mann. Our top stories this hour. Foreign countries are able to get more citizens out of Sudan as a three-day truce sees a lull in the deadly fighting. Seeking a second term at the age of 80, US President Joe Biden formally announces he will run for re-election in 2024. At least 2 dead after Russia bombs a museum in eastern Ukraine amid reports that Kyiv's forces have crossed the strategic Dnipro River. And over the moon, Japan's ice-based rocket prepares for the world's first commercial lunar landing. Fighting in Sudan has eased after the army and paramilitary forces agreed to a 3-day truce, allowing more Sudanese to flee and foreign countries to evacuate more citizens. The UK is the latest country to airlift its nationals out of the capital, Khartoum, where it comes as sporadic gunfire has been reported despite the ceasefire. The country's warring factions have been fighting for nearly 2 weeks, with more than 450 people killed and thousands injured. Tens of thousands of people have fled Sudan in the past few days. For neighbouring Chad, Egypt, Ethiopia and South Sudan, our correspondent Patrick Oyet is following developments from South Sudan's capital, Juba. Good to see you, Patrick. Now, what is the latest on foreign countries' evacuation efforts?
Yes, evacuation efforts are ongoing according to what we are told. We are told that many African countries have also now joined in evacuating their nationals from Sudan. South Africa, for example, has said the process is ongoing. We've also heard from Kenya that has said the process of evacuating its nationals from Sudan is ongoing. Ghana is doing the same. And of course, that is in addition to the UK, to France, to Italy and other European countries that have already evacuated a number of their people from Sudan. We also have even Sudanese leaving Sudan as well. A number have left by road and crossed to Egypt, and a number of other nationals also have left Khartoum by road. They went to Port Sudan East, and from there, some of them are leaving the country. We also have people who have now got the window of opportunity now that fighting has eased. They are moving out of Khartoum to other places within Sudan, but where at least fighting has not been very intense.
Patrick, despite that ceasefire, there have been reports of gunfire, albeit sporadic. What is the current situation?
Yes, there have been at least some sporadic gunfires around the national broadcaster, the state-owned television and radio known as Sudan TV. There have also been reported gunfire around the presidential palace, and it is sporadic. It comes and it goes. But at least it has been a bit okay. People have gone out, some markets have opened, people are able to buy at least some basic needs, those who still have money. But of course, there are people who are saying they don't have money because banks are closed, bank applications which they have on their phones are not working because staff of the banks are not able even to go to the bank. Some of the banks are destroyed. People are on the streets and some people are talking. They're saying they hope that this ceasefire will last and that people, especially the fighting generals, will have an opportunity to really talk. But once in a while, these gunfires still do occur, and that is largely because the fighting is in Khartoum and everybody claims to be controlling everywhere. Like, for example, the Rapid Support Forces will tell you, for example, that we are controlling the national TV. And the government or the Sudan Armed Forces will also say we are controlling the TV. So when there is fighting there or some gunshots there, you do not know who to hold accountable or who even to call and say, hey, you are saying you are here, but you know, there are gunshots here. That's really the challenge with the issue of now making sure that the ceasefire is not violated. So
challenging situation. Patrick Oyet, thank you very much for that update. Let's talk now to Paul Moorcroft, who worked extensively in the UK Ministry of Defence and is now Director for the Centre for Foreign Policy Analysis. Thanks ever so much for coming on the programme. Let's talk about this a little more, because the United States has said it's negotiated a ceasefire, which is now in force. Do you think it's going to hold?
No. Very sadly, no. Your reporter there was saying there was some evidence of gunfire. It's difficult to find out exactly because the phones and the email systems are down in Khartoum mostly. So I would very much like the ceasefire to hold. Khartoum used to be the most peaceful, friendly, safest city in Africa. Now it's the most dangerous. I'm afraid it won't hold. I hope it holds long enough for those British aircraft and other foreign aircraft to get in and rescue some of the particularly dual nationals and British passport holders. I don't think it'll hold. If it lasts 3 days, I'd be very surprised.
Well, if your worst fears are realised and the conflict continues, what impact could it have, do you think, on the wider region?
Well, it's a very tense conflict between two men. These two generals know each other very well. Let's call them intimate enemies. They know each other very well. They hate each other very well too. And this war is going to go on till one side wins, one person wins, or the other is killed. It will expand, and it will have a big impact not only on refugees. South Sudan is in a very bad state, and yet people from Sudan are moving to South Sudan. They're going to Chad, which can't hold anymore or support any more refugees. So there's going to be an extra refugee crisis in the whole region. And it was a pity, because Sudan was very stable, particularly, for example, for controlling the vast amount of people who were trying to illegally enter Europe. Sudan worked to stop that. So this is going to be another Libya, perhaps even, God forbid, another Somalia. So it could, unless the international community, and I don't mean the Americans or the British, I mean the local influencers, Egypt and Saudi Arabia particularly, they're the only ones who can have a real impact.
It's interesting what you say about it being very much a standoff between these two intimate enemies, and what we're seeing, as you're saying, it's almost like a flare-up, but that yet you're comparing it to big conflicts, Libya, Somalia. The conflict, though, does go back very many years, and I wonder if you think that what's been happening over the last few days is really different from that legacy.
It's different, but also a similar trend. The fighting started in 1955, while the British were still running the show, technically the British and the Egyptians. And it was the longest war in Africa between the North and the South, between the Muslims in the North, largely Muslim, and the Christians and the animists. And when that war ended, which Omar al-Bashir, the long-term dictator, managed to end the war, which cost him a lot of support in the army, there were lots of tribal, religious issues, but those still exist. The power of Islamism, the Muslim Brotherhood, all these things are important. But the most important thing is the hostility between these two generals. One, as I've met both, one is a conservative, traditional military man, plays by the book, has got the support of the stronger side, the army and the Air Force, whereas General Hemeti, and I spent a lot of time in Darfur, is very much more flexible. He's not a conservative with a small c. He's a flexible guerrilla fighter. So he's making the most of a smaller force, no air force, but both sides have support from outside, and that's locally particularly, and the Russians a bit. But they are going to continue fighting. As I said, this is a war to the death. This is a duel between, the phrase I just used, intimate enemies. This will go on until one is defeated. That's sad.
Yeah. Sobering news there. Paul Moorcroft, thank you very much for your analysis. Well, US President Joe Biden is officially running for re-election in 2024. He made the formal announcement in a campaign video urging voters to give him 4 more years to finish what he started. It sets the stage for a potential rematch with his predecessor, Donald Trump, who has already launched his bid for the White House. Well, let's speak to our correspondent, John Terrett, who's in New York. John, good to see you. Now, this is the best-kept secret in Washington. It's out.
Yes. Good morning. It is at last. I did tip you off last week. I think we did the program together, you and me, and I said there was a very strong rumor it would come on Tuesday. And then, yes, you remember, good. And then yesterday, Monday, the word went out, well, maybe it won't come Tuesday, maybe it'll be delayed. And then this morning, I was sitting there at my desk, 6 in the morning, just minding my own business, and ping, into the Twitter inbox came a very, very professional video from the White House announcing the president's re-election bid. And he says it is a battle for the soul of America, which is building on what he said in 2020. He says also he's running to defend democracy, to stand up for personal freedoms and the right to vote. He says this is not a time to be complacent. The new campaign slogan from the Bidens for 2024, let's finish the job. So as things stand at the moment, it looks like we're going to have Make America Great Again from President Trump, and let's finish the job now from President Biden. Now, I have to tell you, Biden's poll numbers are depleted, Juliet. They've not really bounced back. He's not in a good place when it comes to poll numbers, and there are questions about how much we will actually see him on the 2024 campaign, which really gets underway properly next year, of course, because his handlers tend to keep him away from the media as much as they can because of, you know, the well-known gaffes that he makes when he speaks off the cuff, Juliet.
Well, you mentioned the poll numbers there, but it's not just about public opinion, is it? He's not without his critics.
No, he certainly is not, and the big problem is that he will be 86 years old if he wins in November 2024 and he serves a full term. He's going to be 86 years old, and that is a worry for many people. Now, Democrats are uncertain about this as well. A recent poll showed that 70% of Americans didn't think he should run again, and of that, 50% were Democrats. Now, the problem is that the Vice President Kamala Harris can't run now because he is running, so she will have to wait until 2028 for her crack at the job. And there are a few other alternatives. I mean, Democrats very much like, and the country very much likes, Michelle Obama, who's the wife of the former President Barack Obama. She's got a number of books out, very, very popular Democrat, but she's showing no signs whatsoever of wanting to get into the political fray. On the plus side, Biden is a winner. He beat Trump in 2020. The midterm elections were very good for his party in November of last year. As for Trump, well, he's way ahead in the polls against Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, who is yet to declare but is thought to be a potential candidate. He's way ahead. Polls also suggest that 60% of Americans do not want to see a redo of Trump-Biden in 2024. And finally, Juliet, in New York today, a rape case against former President Trump is getting underway. It's a civil case. There won't be any jail time. It'll be a financial settlement. It is widely thought that it will not move the needle among Trump supporters who feel all this is being done against the former president for political purposes and to get money out of him. But of course, if he's found guilty, it could affect him in the general election, particularly among women. Julia.
Certainly could. Well, John Terrett, always good to speak to you. We'll see you in the next show. Thank you very much. John Terrett in New York. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead. Ukrainian forces are reportedly crossing the strategic Dnipro River ahead of a spring counter-offensive. We're live from Kyiv next.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
There's a new agenda for a new world, accelerating change in almost every part of our lives. It's shifting the norms of how we work, travel, and connect, how we think, interact, and develop. It's a new reality, a new agenda with me, Juliet Mann. Welcome back. A reminder of our headlines. Foreign countries are able to get more citizens out of Sudan as a three-day truce sees a lull in the deadly fighting. Seeking a second term. At the age of 80, US President Joe Biden formally announces he will run for re-election in 2024. Ukraine says it's carrying out raids on the bank of the Dnipro River to try to dislodge Russian troops. Moscow has held the eastern side near Kherson since retreating from the city in November, but Kyiv is expected to launch a counter-offensive soon to recapture territory. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russian missiles have hit a museum in the eastern city of Kupiansk, killing at least 2 and burying others under the rubble. Russia's denied deliberately targeting civilians. Well, our correspondent Shelby Wilder is in Kyiv. Good to see you, Shelby. Now, can you tell us a little bit more about this round of attacks taking place in Kupiansk?
Yes, well, the latest we have heard is that Kupiansk in the Kharkiv Oblast came under attack and that Russian missile hit a museum in that city. Reportedly, 2 people have been killed and 10 others have been wounded. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that this was just another example of Russia trying to destroy Ukrainian history, culture, and its people. Now, Russian forces had captured Kupiansk last year when this conflict began. It's an important rail hub, but Ukraine managed to take that city back in September of last year.
Shelby, we're hearing reports from the BBC that Ukrainian forces are carrying out raids across the Dnipro River in the southern Kherson region. Russia's denying that. I mean, what is the latest in Kherson?
Yeah, so following reports yesterday that Ukrainian troops had crossed over the Dnipro River into Russian-occupied territory in the southeast of Ukraine, today Ukrainian officials confirmed that. The deputy head of the Kherson region said that Ukrainian troops are now frequently carrying out raids on the eastern bank of the Dnipro. And what this means is that Ukrainian forces now are trying to dislodge Russian positions. Russia's military took up bases on that eastern bank last November after they retreated from the key Ukrainian city of Kherson when Ukraine recaptured it. Otherwise, Ukrainian military officials have said that these operations call for, quote, informational silence, end quote, as they are seemingly not wanting to reveal any sensitive plans about that upcoming counteroffensive. And otherwise, we have been hearing reports that because of Ukrainian forces now landing on the eastern bank of the Dnipro, Russia is now apparently forcibly removing residents from parts of the Kherson region near where Ukrainian troops have landed, again on that eastern bank. And Russia is trying to evacuate these civilians. Ukrainian officials have said that this could be in regards to anticipation of that upcoming counteroffensive.
Shelby Wilder in Kyiv, thank you very much. Now, an energy-efficient house project worth $19 million has been unveiled by the University of Salford in the UK. It will play a role in testing the technologies that make homes greener and cheaper to run. Our correspondent Siobhan McCall reports.
Are these the houses of the future? That's what researchers in Manchester are hoping to find out. They've built a giant $19 million climate chamber in search of the most energy-efficient home. 2 model houses have been kitted out with infrared panels and the UK's first roof heat pump, a space and money-saving alternative to a gas boiler. The outside of the homes are made with a special thermal material that insulates better than brick. Inside, the homes can be programmed to respond to temperature changes through the use of an app. It's time to put the buildings to the test.
It's an incredibly cold -17 degrees here at the Energy House at the University of Salford. Researchers are able to recreate a range of temperatures, including snow at the moment, and then they can take it to sun, wind and rain to test out what homes of the future will be coming up against. It allows them to recreate conditions in a matter of weeks that via traditional ways could take years.
Bills here will be around $95 a month, according to the home builders, compared with just under $400 in old terrace homes. But the big upfront cost associated with going green often puts people off.
The way to look at it for me is that, yes, the homes will be more expensive because you're adding technology to them, but actually those costs are put into a mortgage that's done over a 20-25 year period.
Soon people will move into these model homes, and their every move will be closely monitored to find out which technology and which materials are best suited to real-world living.
We can also look at climate change predictions. So a building that will be built in 2023 or 2025 when the regulations changed, how well is that going to perform in 2030, 2050 and 2080?
After the trial is complete, researchers are hoping to use what they learn from the UK project and take it internationally, to places all the way from Switzerland to Shanghai. Siobhan McCall, CGTN, Salford.
Well, staying with going greener, pollution in Mexico's capital has reached dangerous levels in recent years. But with the help of Chinese technology, the city is taking steps to improve its air quality. Our correspondent Alistair Baverstock reports from Mexico City.
Mexico City, once the world's most polluted city, and in the 21st century, an urban area which still struggles with air quality.
Mexico City's air has high levels of particle matter between 30 and 35 micrograms per cubic meter, which is a lot compared with the World Health Organization's recommendation of a maximum of 5.
However, things have improved a lot since the UN named this city the world's most polluted in 1992, thanks to actions such as relocating industrial operations and investment in public transport. Today, the municipal government is seeking to make public transport run on greener energy with the help of Chinese EV technology.
Our goal is to substitute our current vehicles with electric-powered buses when they reach the end of their working life. So far, we have 60 all-electric vehicles circulating within our fleet of nearly 900 buses.
Made by Yutong, a leading Chinese EV company, drivers say they are delighted by the change away from diesel.
All
the drivers have noticed that these vehicles don't vibrate at all, which was not the case with the previous internal combustion models. That has made our jobs much less stressful over the course of a long day.
The capital's Metrobus system transports 1.7 million passengers a day, and the authorities say these new models will make a big difference to the air quality.
We estimate that this fleet will reduce our CO2 emissions by 90,000 tons of CO2 a year.
Good news for the city's air quality, but Andrea says if this country wants to rely on green energy, then Mexico must stop generating electricity primarily on fossil fuels.
Our energy strategies have to be aligned, investing in electric buses, but also decarbonizing our electricity generation. And in that aspect, we are currently moving backwards.
As Mexico City begins to transition to clean energy, its residents may soon be breathing easier. Alistair Baverstock, CGTN, Mexico City.
Singapore is set to hang a 46-year-old man for trafficking cannabis into the country in 2013. The UN Human Rights Office has urged the city-state to urgently reconsider the scheduled execution. Singapore has some of the world's toughest anti-drug laws, which it says are necessary to protect society. PCR testing will soon be dropped for passengers heading to China. The Chinese Foreign Ministry says all inbound travellers will only need to show a negative COVID antigen test taken within 48 hours before departure. The new rule will take effect at the end of this month. The toughest race in the world, Marathon des Sables, has kicked off in Morocco's Sahara Desert. The ultramarathon involves 6 stages with approximately 250 metres of running. More than 1,000 competitors are taking part, and so far 20 have dropped out after the first stage, and a dozen more were unable to start on the morning of the second stage due to extreme fatigue. Well, Japanese startup iSpace is preparing to land on the moon in what would be the world's first commercial lunar landing. The Hakuto R lander is set to touch down in coming hours. It was launched on a SpaceX rocket from Florida in December, and since then it's taken a 3-month trek to enter orbit around the moon. The lander's carrying a rover developed in the United Arab Emirates, the first Arab-built lunar spacecraft. Well, China has unveiled its most detailed plan yet for deep space exploration. CGTN correspondent Sun Yi has more.
Wu Yanhua, chief designer of China's deep space exploration major project, gave a clear and detailed plan for deep space exploration Tuesday. Wu said China will launch the Queqiao-2 relay satellite and the Chang'e 6 probe in 2024 to retrieve lunar sample. It will launch Chang'e 7 around 2026 for lunar South Pole resource exploration and launch Chang'e 8 in around 2028 to construct the International Lunar Research Station's basic model along with Chang'e 7. Wu also said China plans to launch the Tianwen-2 probe around 2025. He said China's international cooperation will include the International Lunar Research Station, the China Gulf Arab Lunar and Deep Space Exploration Center, and the International Deep Space Exploration Federation. Wu Weiren, chief designer for China's lunar exploration program, gave the clearest outline yet for the International Lunar Research Station. He said the International Lunar Research Station would be jointly built by China and multiple countries. It will be a comprehensive scientific experimental facility that will operate autonomously for a long time on the moon's surface in orbit, with short-term human participation. It will be expandable, maintainable, with 5 basic infrastructure facilities. Wu also said the full model for the International Lunar Research Station would complete by 2040. After that, the station would further upgrade to a practical and multifunctional lunar base. China National Space Administration and the Asia-Pacific Space Cooperation Organization also signed a joint statement on cooperation in the International Lunar Research Station Tuesday. Sun Ye, CGTN, Hefei in Anhui Province.
The headlines again. Foreign countries are able to get more citizens out of Sudan as a 3-day truce sees a lull in the deadly fighting. At the age of 80, US President Joe Biden formally announces he'll run for re-election in 2024. At least 2 dead after Russia bombs a museum in eastern Ukraine amid reports that Kyiv's forces have crossed the strategic Dnipro River. And that's the world today. Thanks for watching. There's more news on CGTN Europe's channel on the Telegram app, or scan the QR code on the screen to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone. We're back with more news at the top of the hour. Coming up next, though, it's World Insight with Tian Wei. For now, from me and all the team here in London, goodbye.